To Hittin Hard with John Chuckery and Locked On Sports Atlanta, reminding you, head over to youtube.com, put Locked On Sports Atlanta into your search browser. When you find us, hit the subscribe button, leave us a comment there. Of course, free and available on all of your favorite podcast platforms, Spotify, Odyssey. When you find us, give us that 5-star review. And of course, you can follow me on my personal Twitter page at JMCH316. We joked earlier about it's NBA draft eve, right? You know, tomorrow really will start the defining era of the Travis Schlenk administration. Now, we're obviously going to get some changes within the Hawks organization. July 1st, you're going to have a new quote-unquote general manager, as Landry Fields will be the actual general manager of the team, and Travis Schlenk will continue his role as president of basketball operations. Now, Fields already is a guy that works with, obviously, Travis Schlenk. He's in the organization. It's just a title thing. There are ways you can look at that, but this is what I believe. This is my gut opinion. And having talked to Tony Ressler before and things like that, and talked to Travis Schlenk, my gut is if they don't get this thing on track where they want to be, Travis Schlenk will be the guy that will be the fall guy in all of this. It will be on Travis Schlenk. And they have a quote-unquote ready-made GM in Fields that they can turn things over to. He probably won't get the basketball operations title. They'll leave that open. But this is where Travis Schlenk's got to earn his money now. You know, because we always talk about with the Hawks, right? That pendulum. Which way is that pendulum going to swing for the Atlanta Hawks? Are they more like a team that barely can get themselves into the playoffs and have to get into play-in rounds? Or are we going to be a team that plays up toward the top of the Eastern Conference and can compete for winning the Eastern Conference and getting ourselves to the finals? Maybe we're not winning the Eastern Conference. Maybe we're not quite there. But there's a big difference between, hey, we're barely hanging on for dear life in the regular season to get into a play-in, and we're in a pretty solid position to compete in the East, right? That pendulum, which way is it going to swing? That starts this year. And I think Tony Ressler's a guy who made it very clear that, yes, there's going to be patience, and yes, there are things that we have to improve on. Yes, there are things that didn't go our way or this, that, and the other. But you feel like you have some pieces that are ready to help you win. And when you have a Trae Young, even as young as Trae is, he's a ready-to-win now star. And he's a guy ready to lead a franchise to a potential finals bid or what have you. Certainly something more than hang on for dear life in one of the very last playoff spots. You know, in years past, the Hawks would not have been a playoff team last year. Only the play-in round saved them because you weren't getting a 9th and 10th seed in the old playoff format, things like that. So that's not success by anybody's definition. More of, you know, they were tied for the 4th best record in the East a couple of years ago, and that's when that pendulum swung and they hit it toward the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm not saying that at the end of the year you have to have success defined as being in the Eastern Conference Finals or things like that, but they have to look like a team that's not just barely hanging on by a thread during the regular season and lucky that the playoffs are expanded to get them into play-in rounds to play themselves into an actual playoff series and end up with the, you know, playing the best team in the Eastern Conference and getting knocked out early. It can't be like that now. And that's where the pressure comes on Schlenk. And I don't think Travis has done a bad job here in Atlanta. I think he's actually done quite a good job cleaning up some of the old messes and transforming this roster around. And maybe success came too early for the Hawks. I don't know. And maybe the Eastern Conference got better quicker around the Atlanta Hawks. Maybe. I mean, that's a legitimate concern. But I don't think Tony Ressler is going to sit back, and if it's another year of just fledgling along and things don't quite go their way, that there won't be some kind of change. I think Nate McMillan will get some benefit of the doubt. He just signed his 4-year deal, this past offseason. So I think he'll get some benefit of the doubt. But I think that I think depending on how this roster gets reshaped, and everybody's admitted that they should not have just ran it back and not made any changes. And I've heard Steve Koonin say that, hey, we had some deals on the table that we just decided not to pull the trigger. Let's run back with the guys, and let's, you know, even at the trade deadline, let's not, you know, make any moves to really upset the apple cart. We've dealt with a lot of injuries and things like that. So I think they're counting on you're going to have guys back for a majority of the season. The DeAndre Hunters, the John Collins, you got to get those guys back and playing at a regular level. By the way, if you look at you look at guys like, John Collins last year only played 54 games. Hunter only played 53 games. Bogey only played 63 games. Gallinari only played 66 games. Now, not all of those guys may or may not be here, but my point is you have to get more games out of all of those guys. All of those guys have to be healthier, and you have to find what you need so that when you get to the playoffs, it's going to be a better result. I've got somebody to complement Trey. Whether we like it or not, it is a star-driven league, right? You have to have multiples of guys. It's not coincidence that the Warriors and the Celtics are the teams that ended up there. Celtics have, first team All-NBA and guys that are all defense and this, that, and the other. And obviously we know Golden State has. They got Hall of Famers up and down their roster. But this is going to be the time that really defines Schlenk, because either this thing is going to get back on track, or I think that there'll be some definite talk about, does there need to be a change? Does there need to be a change at the top of the organization? They've done some good things, but, let's face it. The Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter draft, okay, Hunter looks like he might be a good player, but if he's only a role player on this team and he's the number 4 overall pick and you've already traded away Cam Reddish, how good does that draft look? And you have a couple of guys that, let's see if they can get in the mix from last year, right? Cooper, Johnson, see if they can get in the mix. And yes, I understand that Nate has to play those guys, but they have to earn their way into this thing. They have to show that they can contribute to this team and get this thing right. You're not going to play guys just for the sake of playing them. And I think, honestly, it may not be fair. Maybe more of the blame should go on Nate McMillan. But when you're the president of basketball operations and you're put into that top charge of it, and the franchise, for whatever reason, doesn't get itself on track, I think that's the guy who's going to get the arrows slung at him. And again, that may be fair, unfair, this, that, and the other, but I think that's how Tony Ressler looks at it. So it'll start tomorrow, and tomorrow won't give us very much insight into where the Hawks are going, right? They'll draft a player, probably a defensive-minded wing. There's multiple guys, it's the kid out of Ohio State, the kid out of LSU, the kid out of Santa Clara, Ty Washington. You got this guy, you got that guy. I've seen like 8 different names mocked to the Hawks because they're picking at 16. And at that point, it's all a crapshoot. You're hoping to find a role player. But if you're not getting stars, if you draft, 4, 10, things like that, that's where it gets harder and harder to just wait out building it. And Trey is a guy that you feel like you can win now. And I think Tony Ressler thinks you can win now with Trey. Let's put some guys around him. And you're not in a bad, even though the Hawks don't have a ton of cap space, they do have movable pieces. They do have pieces that you can move that represent a decent amount of cap space. Gallinari's in the $20 million+ range. Bogey's almost $20+ million. I think he's $18 or $19 million. You have guys that have enough cap room that you can use them to go get these star players. You're not in a terrible position. So it will start tomorrow, but this is really going to be the Travis Schlenk defining moment for him as to what this offseason is going to represent. I'm hoping they get it right, because I think there's a lot of opportunity, but you got to start building around Trey and find that next star. We thank you for making Hittin' Hard with John Chuckery on Locked On Sports Atlanta your first listen every day. Reminding you, make A to Z with Mark Zinno your second listen every day, as Mark is back talking all things Atlanta sports. He's got those opinions that you may not always like, but you got to hear. He's free and available on our YouTube page, Locked On Sports Atlanta. Also available on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Download it, Spotify, Odyssey. Find your favorites. Leave us reviews on everything. And, of course, you can always follow me on my personal Twitter page at JMCH316. We will be back with you tomorrow as we get ready for the NBA draft. This is Hittin' Hard with John Chuckery on Locked On Sports Atlanta.